So, welcome everybody to the Uncovering the Beauty of Shabbat Part 2. Sitting out here, getting ready soon for the onset of Shabbat, which is so beautiful. Sitting out here is beautiful, nice and peaceful. And, last week I started with some of the rules and laws and didn't have enough time to say the story. Let me look at the clock over here. So we stick within the time frame. So what I would like to do today is actually start with a Shabbos story and then move on from there and discuss a little bit the topic of today, uncovering the beauty of Shabbos. We'll focus a little bit maybe on wine and the Shabbos meal. So we'll get to that after we first share a Shabbat story. This story takes us back quite a number of years. Probably over 100 years ago, and it was Little Rose, or close to 100 years ago. It was Little Rose. Actually, no, I think it was more than over 100 years ago. Little Rose was, at the time, I believe she was 12 years old, and she was saying goodbye to her father. She was about to take a trip, get on a boat eventually to the United States of America. She was leaving Poland. That world was in turmoil, and it wasn't uncommon for people to send their kinderlach, their kids, away. And it was a very, very, very difficult, emotional departure, because you were most likely, or there was a good chance, that you were not going to see your child again. Imagine the need to make a decision like that. And her father gives Little Rose his parting words. He says, "Know wherever you are, God is watching over you. Stay true to your heritage, stay true to your religion. You're going to a country where that will be challenging." In the early 1900s, to remain true to your Jewish heritage was a difficult challenge for anybody, never mind a child of 12 years old. And what I want you to do is, I want you to remember the following words. Derva in Yiddish, Dervas hit the Shabbos hit or the Ir. The one who keeps the Shabbos will protect them. Whatever you do, always remember to keep the Shabbos, was the final words her father said to her. And with that, he said goodbye with tears, his tears and her tears mixing, and she's off after a hug that would last a lifetime. She comes to this country, and she is taken in by her cousins. Without going into details of some of what happened up to that point, the travel and so on, but to make a long story a little shorter, because of the limitation of time, she's taken in by her cousins very warmly, and they find her a job. Everybody had to work. They find her a job, and like many Jews in Yiddish we say the Alte Heim, when it came Shabbos, it was very difficult to find a place. It was very difficult to work and to take off on Shabbos. This was before the laws of religious discrimination, etc., etc. So the first Shabbos, she found some excuse why not to go into the factory. She was sick. The second Shabbos, she woke up late, whatever it is. For a couple of weeks, she had some excuse of why she did not come in to work on Shabbos. Finally, the manager says to her, "Listen, Rose, I know the shtick over here, the Shabbos shtick. This can't go on. Either you come on Shabbos or no job." She comes home. What does she do? She's not willing to give up Shabbos. This was the words her father told her. This was as precious to her as anything else. And but her cousins start to pressure her. They were already in the country for quite a while. They were basically assimilated. And they're pressuring her. It says, "Look, what could you do? This is what you got to do. You got to make a living. And she doesn't want to work on Shabbos. And the whole week she's under tremendous stress. She doesn't know what to do. Cousins are telling her, "You got to go." And it comes Friday. She's at work during the day, and she's struggling within herself. She can't focus on the work, and she finally makes a decision. She's not coming in on Shabbos. But the next day, she doesn't have the guts to tell her cousins on the decision. So she leaves the house and she's walking up and down the streets of Manhattan on Shabbat. And she finally sits down by a park, and the pigeons are there, and she starts to sing one of the songs that her father would sing on Shabbat, Yona Matzah, Yona Matzah, which means that even the pigeons find rest on Shabbat. And she's sitting there with the pigeons crying, knowing that on the one hand she's happy she had the strength and the resolve to keep Shabbat, on the other hand she's losing a job, and who knows if her cousins, how angry the cousins will be. But she's happy with her decision, and this is what she does for the rest of the day. After dark, she sees the moon coming out, the 3 stars, and she says the prayer Baruch HaMavdil, the Havdalah prayer, and she comes home expecting to get, as we would say in Yiddish, to get it ibn cup, to get it over the head. And first she sees her cousin Joe, and she expects him, I guess he was somewhat her age, maybe a little older, and expects him to give it to her over the head. And he says to her, he grabs her and he hugs her, and he says, Rose, are you okay? Are you okay? He says, what am I? I'm okay. I lost my job, but I'm okay. He says, didn't you hear? He says, there was a major fire in your factory, and we were so worried, we were so nervous. And she said, look, I didn't go into work. And then he repeated what her father would always say, there was haltem Shabbos, the Shabbos halt em. But there was hitem Shabbos, the Shabbos hit ir. Whoever guards the Shabbos will protect her. And Rose Goldstein was one of very few survivors who survived the very infamous fire at the Triangle South Shirtwaist factory that burnt down on I'm not sure, in 1911. I think it was March 25th. I don't remember the exact date, where 140 people died, tragically and sadly. But somebody was watching over Rose in honor of the keeping of the Shabbat. So I thought we will start a story with the Shabbat to inspire us to keep Shabbat. There's nothing more beautiful Shabbat. And since today's focus is wine and gefilte fish, let's talk a few minutes about that. So let's explain to you the origin of making Kiddush and the meaning of the word Kiddush. Kiddush means to sanctify. Now what's the origin? Where does this come from? So the Torah tells us, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekacho. You should remember the Shabbos to make it holy. Lekacho is the same word as Kiddush. So what does it mean you should remember the Shabbos to make it holy? What does that mean? So Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekacho. So the sages tell us that what does it mean to make it, to remember the Shabbos? Zachor means you have to actually say words that express the holiness of Shabbos. Like every single mitzvah. There is no mitzvah that we do today that is said in the Torah that is not expounded and explained, the parameters of it by the sages of the Talmud. Whether it's not eating on Yom Kippur, whether it's kosher, whether it's a mezuzah, tefillin, it's all, every mitzvah has certain guidelines which we were told by our sages of how to fulfill that mitzvah. And that's a discussion unto its own. The sages understood this mitzvah in the Torah, Zachor et Yom Shabbat, Zochreo bidvarim. You should remember it by saying words. And that's why they have formulated a certain words, which I'll be glad if I remember to link to the actual words of Kiddush, both in Hebrew and English, that there are words of praise. Now, technically, in the most literal sense, if you just say words of praise about Shabbat, you have fulfilled the biblical obligation. But again, our sages have told us that you should go ahead and you should say the specific words that they have designed, like many of the things that they have formulated. So someone who's maybe not as comfortable, and there's also someone who's not, let me not rush ahead of myself, someone who's not so comfortable with expressing the beauty of Shabbat will still be able to say the Kiddush, whether it's Hebrew and English. And of course, like everything the sages put together, also have a deeper layer, meaning beyond our understanding. So that's the wording of the Kiddush that we say. There's the Yom HaShishi, of course, and some instructions related to the Kiddush is that while we say the Kiddush, which should be standing, the first few words that we say, you're supposed to look at the Shabbat candles, and then afterwards you turn to the cup of wine, especially once you make the Borei Pri HaGofen. So these are some of the instructions related to Kiddush. Also, with regards to Kiddush, which again is from the word Kedusha, holiness, which means to sanctify and make holy the Shabbat, which tells us that even though Shabbat is holy on its own, we make Kiddush because God wants us to sanctify it as well. He wants our effort. He wants our input. He wants us to go ahead and recognize and appreciate and separate from the mundane, from everything we do throughout the week, and say, okay, we are now sanctifying Shabbat and making ourselves holy, and making the day holy by acting in a holy way, by acting in a spiritual way, by coming together with the family. In that vein, our sages instituted, they were mitaken, that the Kiddush and the words of Kiddush should be said over a cup of wine. Because anything of chashivut, anything of importance is usually done over a cup of wine. You have a bris. When you make a bris, you have a cup of wine. You have a wedding under a chuppah, you have a cup of wine. Many times, in order to add both to the joy and to the importance of something, we make sure that our sages said you should do it over a cup of wine. Now, also, as it says in Shulchan Aruch, taken from the Gemara, the best wine to make Kiddush is red wine. Because we learn from the prophets that good wine is red wine. However, if you like white wine and you don't like red wine, then it's better to use white wine. But if you have a choice, it is better for Kiddush to use red wine. And today, there are so many fantastic kosher wines that have won top awards, whether it's Baron Herzog or wines from Israel, from the Galil, etc., etc. There's many fantastic wines. It's a mitzvah, if possible, to use red wine. We take the cup and we're supposed to fill it to the brim, and actually even spill it over a little bit. Spill over a little bit because it represents bracha, it represents blessing, and there should be overpouring of blessing. And then we take it in the right hand, we pass it to the left, and we put it in the palm of the right hand, representing a receptacle, to be a receptacle of the blessings. This also has Kabbalistic origins. And then we say the beautiful Kiddush, which today you just type in the word Kiddush, or if you ask me, or if I remember, I'll post a link to the Kiddush. We say the Kiddush. The whole family stands around. This is after we said the Shalom Aleichem, which we might talk about independently. And we have, after we finish, you should be drinking a minimum of 3.5 ounces before you share it with the rest of the mishpucha, with the rest of the family. Everybody should be drinking a little bit of the Kiddush. I will also say that from sundown until after Kiddush, you're not supposed to eat or drink. So remember that. And we're all at home and we're quarantining. And so we might as well do it right. Might as well from sundown till after Kiddush. Don't eat, don't drink, then you'll be excited to make Kiddush, to have the family come together and have a beautiful Shabbat table, which is all part of the spirit and the beauty of Shabbat. Now, I said I'll also mention a little bit about, now I want to step back for a second. Perhaps, this is just a suggestion, I haven't seen this anywhere. Perhaps another reason of why we go ahead and we make Kiddush on wine, the Talmud uses the expression, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod. When wine goes in, when wine enters, sod, the secrets come forth. Now, on a simple level, this also means that when someone becomes intoxicated, in Yiddish there's a saying, "Was a nichteren auf en lung, a shikeren auf en zung." That which a nichter means a sober person, has on his lungs, in other words, he keeps inside. A shikr person, someone who's drunk, it's on his tongue. Nichnas yayin, wine enters, and all of a sudden a soid, things that should not be said, things that are supposed to remain private, they're supposed to remain concealed, secret, come forth. That's, in fact, Rashi there in the Talmud says that if you take the word yayin, for those who remember their Hebrew letters, if you take the word yayin, yayin is spelled yud, nun, or nun sofit. A yud in Hebrew, the numerical value for yud is 10. And you have another yud is another 10. Yud and yud is 10, 10 and 10 is 20. Nun sofit, the numerical value for that is 50. So you have 50, you have another 10, the numerical value for that is 70. 70 is as the 70 sages of Chachamim that Moshe Rabbeinu gave over his wisdom, 70. If you take the word sod, remember we said nichnas yain, when wine comes in, the secrets come forth. Sod is written samach, vav, and a daled. Samach is 60, Vav is 6 and Dalet is 4. 60, 4 and 6 is 70. So Yayin and Sod have the same numerical value. That's why Nichnas Yayin, wine goes in, Sod comes forth, because one sets the other one into motion. One triggers the other one. So at a deeper level, why do we say, and this is, I haven't seen this is a suggestion, so you could take it or you could leave it. Why do we make Kiddush on wine before Shabbat, or as soon as Shabbat actually enters, right after the beginning of Shabbat? Is because Sod also represents the more inner dimension, the truer dimension. You know, Chachmat HaKabbalah. Kabbalah is called Chachmat HaSod, the wisdom, the secret wisdom, because it's the truth that energizes the universe. Throughout the week, we are engaged with a lot of sort of I don't know, falsehoods might be a bit of a strong word, but with a lot of veneers, with a lot of cover-ups. We're dealing with things where the truth that energizes it all is sometimes concealed and covered, which is why we get distracted. If all of a sudden things don't go as we'd like it to go, we get distracted because we don't necessarily see always the hand of God in what is behind all of it. We don't see the truth or inner truth or inner drive of things, the purpose of things, the reasons. We're just, in Yiddish we say we're fayokt, we're carried away, we're stressed out, and so on. We don't see things straight. It comes Friday, we're entering Shabbat. That's a time when we take the yayin, so the sod, the inner, true, godly, holy, spiritual, truthful dimension of everything comes to the forefront, and we enter into that realm. Which is why on Shabbat we all of a sudden feel that things are just, it's a whole different plane. We feel so much more relaxed. We feel that we could let go of things. Not everything is, you're not holding the whole world. You're not holding your whole world. Let go. Shabbos is here. Nichnas Yayin. Wine comes in, and you're doing it with a mitzvah, not just wine because you want to stop drink and become shikar, we would say in Yiddish, because you want to become intoxicated. You're making a bracha, you're sanctifying Shabbat, you recognize that God is the creator. 6 days God created the world, 7th day He rested. You know that there's a higher power, there's a truth behind the veneer, behind the facade that the world puts up throughout the week. Comes Shabbos, Yatsa Sod, the secret of the truth of the universe, and your truth, and your inner strength, and your inner ability, and your inner trust and faith comes forth. Machaya, you can now sit down by the Shabbos table with your family, enjoy and appreciate, and be uplifted, which is how we then begin the Shabbat meal. So that's our thought for today, wine. I was maybe going to go over into fish, but why not? Let's let the fish cook and the kugel and some other stuff, and we will focus on that next week. Let me know how your Kiddush went this week. If you have any questions, please share. You should have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat and a fantastic week, and may the Shabbos uplift you so that you could start all over again, but most importantly so that you could achieve that spiritual heights that your inner secret can definitely come to the forefront and achieve. Everybody, a guten Shabbos.